There comes a moment in your life when you finally understand that silence is not emptiness, it is power. You start to see how every time you shared your plans, they slowed down. Every time you trusted the wrong person, your motivation disappeared. Every time you announced your next move, your energy scattered. And suddenly it hits you. Most people don't want you to grow, they want you to stay predictable. Buddhism teaches that the fastest growth happens in the quiet spaces of your life, when your mind is focused and your path is private. Because when no one knows what you're doing, no one can stop it. When no one knows your direction, no one can distract it. And when you walk alone, you walk without noise, without judgment, without competition, only truth, discipline, and clarity. This is the moment you learn to move in silence. This is the moment your life begins to grow faster than ever before. 1. Silence protects your energy more than people do. Most people don't lose their motivation because their dreams are impossible. They lose it because they share too much, too early, with the wrong people. When you talk openly about your plans, goals, or next steps, you unintentionally give others permission to influence your path. Some will doubt you, some will question you, some will secretly hope you fail because your success would remind them of their own lack of effort. And some will simply drain your energy with unnecessary advice, criticism, or comparisons. Human beings naturally judge what they do not understand, and nothing confuses people more than someone who suddenly becomes serious about changing their life. Silence is not hiding, and it is not fear. Silence is protection. When you stop talking about your goals, you stop letting people inject their fears into your mind. You stop absorbing their insecurities. You stop allowing their opinions to redirect your focus. Silence keeps your personal fire burning without interruption. It lets you work without pressure, grow without interference, and think without distraction. Your biggest transformations always happen in private. Think about how a seed grows. It breaks, expands, and strengthens underground, hidden from the world, before it ever touches the sunlight. If someone tried to dig it up too early, it would die. In the same way, your dreams need privacy. They need time to develop. They need silence to gain power. When no one knows what you're building, no one can slow it down, doubt it, or distract you from it. Silence gives you space to understand yourself, to refine your thoughts, to choose your direction, and to protect your progress before it becomes visible. It shields you from the expectations of others and frees you from the need to impress anyone. In silence, your mind becomes clear, your decisions become stronger, and your energy becomes laser-focused. You are able to move with purpose and confidence because your growth is no longer being shaped or limited by outside voices. This is why silence is not weakness. It is strategy. It is the invisible armor that guards your motivation, your passion, and your purpose. And once you learn how powerful it is, you stop wasting your energy explaining your life to people who will never understand your path. You realize that you don't need everyone to know your moves. You only need the discipline to make them. 2. Lone paths create the strongest minds. Walking alone doesn't mean you are isolated or broken. It means you have entered the stage of life where real growth begins. Most people spend their entire lives depending on the presence, approval, encouragement, or validation of others. They need someone beside them to feel confident, someone cheering them on to feel strong, someone watching them to feel motivated. But the truth is, the strongest minds in history were built in moments of solitude, not in crowds. When you choose to walk alone, you force yourself to rely on your own inner voice instead of the noise around you. You learn how to think without being influenced, how to make decisions without being pressured, and how to stay committed without anyone applauding for you. This is where true mental strength is created. Buddhism teaches that the path toward enlightenment is walked alone, not because others don't love you, but because no one else can walk inside your mind. No one else can face your fears. No one else can manage your emotions. No one else can carry your trauma, your dreams, your doubts, or your responsibilities. When you finally accept that your life is your responsibility, not a shared burden, your mind begins to grow in ways you never imagined. You stop waiting for people to support you. You stop hoping someone will motivate you. You stop depending on others to keep you going. Instead, you become your own teacher, your own guide, and your own source of strength. This loneliness is not a punishment. It is preparation. Solitude sharpens your thinking because it removes all distractions. You get to observe your thoughts without anyone influencing them. You learn to listen to your intuition instead of constantly seeking advice. You discover your own rhythm, your own pace, your own style, and your own voice. And the more time you spend with yourself, the more you begin to understand the kind of person you want to become. People who fear walking alone are usually afraid of meeting their real self. But those who embrace solitude become unshakable. They develop the ability to remain calm under pressure because they're not used to being carried by others. They develop confidence that does not depend on external approval. They develop resilience because they've had to pick themselves up more than once. And they develop clarity because their mind is not clouded by the opinions or emotions of everyone around them. When you walk alone, you grow faster because there is nothing holding you back. No comparisons, no distractions, no jealousy, no noise, just you, your goals, your discipline, and your path. This is why the strongest minds are always built in silence, because solitude forces you to rise, forces you to mature, and forces you to depend on the only person you will have for your entire life: yourself. 3. Talking too soon weakens your discipline. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that talking about their goals helps them achieve them. In reality, the opposite is true. The moment you start announcing your plans to others, your brain begins to relax. It feels a small sense of satisfaction just from saying the words, as if the work is already done. This psychological trick is powerful. Your mind confuses talking with achieving, so instead of maintaining the hunger, the drive, and the discipline required to actually build your dream, your energy drops. You become less committed, less consistent, and less focused. This is why so many people talk big but deliver small. Their discipline dies the moment their mouth opens. When you talk too soon, you give away the energy that was meant to fuel your progress. Imagine your goals as a fire inside you. Every time you speak about it, you release a little smoke, and little by little, that fire weakens. Instead of burning quietly and powerfully inside, it spreads outward, losing heat and strength. The more you talk, the colder your ambition becomes. This is why the most successful people in history worked in silence. They didn't need to prove anything, brag about anything, or announce anything. Their results spoke for them because all their energy went into action, not conversation. Talking too soon also exposes your goals to unnecessary judgment. The moment you tell people what you're planning, you invite their doubts, fears, and negativity into your mind. Even if they don't mean harm, their words can shape your thinking. Someone might say, "That's too risky," or "Are you sure you can do that?" or "Maybe you should wait." And suddenly, your once clear path becomes cloudy. Their doubt becomes your doubt. Their fear becomes your fear. Their hesitation becomes your hesitation. Your discipline, which was once strong, begins to shake under the weight of other people's opinions. The truth is, discipline grows best in silence. When you keep your goals private, you protect your focus. You remove the pressure of expectations. You give yourself space to make mistakes without being watched. You give yourself time to learn without being judged. You give yourself the freedom to grow without comparison. And this freedom fuels discipline more than anything else. You begin to wake up early, not because someone is expecting you to succeed, but because you are committed to yourself. You start working harder, not to prove something, but because you genuinely want to evolve. Your motivation becomes internal rather than external. Silence also strengthens your identity. When no one knows what you're doing, you naturally begin to rely on your own mentality, your own routine, your own priorities. You no longer seek validation, you create your own standards. This builds a powerful discipline that no approval or criticism can touch. You stop acting for others and start acting for your own growth. You build a life that reflects your values rather than the expectations of the crowd. And the more you stay silent, the more you preserve the purity of your effort. Think of discipline as a muscle that grows in private. You don't walk into a gym and announce to everyone that you're about to lift weights. You just lift. Similarly, you don't need to announce your plans to the world. You need to execute them. When you stop talking and start doing, your focus sharpens, your commitment becomes stronger, your progress accelerates. Silence becomes your secret weapon, allowing you to channel all your energy into building instead of explaining. And once you master this, you'll realize something powerful. Quiet effort always outperforms loud intentions. 4. Privacy removes the wrong people automatically. One of the most liberating truths in life is realizing that you don't actually have to confront, fight, expose, or argue with the wrong people to remove them from your life. You only need to become more private. The moment you stop giving people access to your thoughts, your plans, your emotions, your progress, and your personal world, something very powerful happens. They lose interest. People who are only in your life to take, compare, gossip, monitor, or judge can only survive where there is information. Once the information stops, they quietly disappear on their own. Privacy becomes a natural filter that protects you without creating conflict. Everyone around you is not meant to know your journey. Some people stay close to you not because they care, but because they want to measure your growth against theirs. Some want to know your next move so they can copy it. Some want to hear your struggles because it makes them feel superior. Some want to know your dreams just to discourage you, and some simply enjoy the drama of your life because they have none in their own. When you remain open, expressive, and easy to read, you give all these people a free front row seat to your life. They don't support you. They simply observe you. And observation from the wrong people becomes a silent form of sabotage. Privacy cuts this cycle instantly. When you stop explaining what you're doing, your energy stops leaking. When you stop sharing your struggles, people lose the opportunity to manipulate them. When you stop announcing your goals, others can no longer discourage or interfere. When your life becomes quiet, people who were never truly with you begin to fade out naturally because there is nothing left for them to feed on. They cannot compete with you if they do not know what you are aiming for. They cannot judge your progress if they cannot see it. They cannot sabotage your plans if they have no access to them. Buddhism teaches the importance of detachment, not from people themselves, but from the unnecessary connections that drain your peace. Privacy creates this detachment naturally when you become selective about what you share and who you share it with. Your social circle shrinks, but your life becomes lighter. You stop attracting people who are curious but not supportive, present but not loyal, friendly but not genuine. Silence becomes a shield that only truth can pass through. Anyone who stays is someone who values you, not what they can extract from you. Anyone who leaves is someone who was only there for the information, not for you. Privacy also gives you space to grow without interference. Most people don't realize how much influence others have on their decisions. A single negative comment can plant doubt in your mind for months. A single careless remark can stop you from pursuing something meaningful. And a single jealous reaction can make you hide your success in shame. But when your life is private, you protect yourself from these invisible attacks. You create a mental environment where your decisions come from your own clarity, not from the noise of others. You begin to move based on what is right for your soul, not what is acceptable to those watching. The people meant for you will never require full access to your life. They will respect your boundaries, support your silence, and understand your privacy. They don't need constant updates because they believe in your capability. They don't need to know all your details because their loyalty isn't dependent on information. On the other hand, the wrong people need your life to be loud because silence makes them irrelevant. And that is exactly why privacy is so powerful. It cleans your life without effort, confrontation, or pain. It simply reveals who truly belongs. Once you experience the peace that privacy brings, you will never return to the old habit of oversharing. You will realize that your life becomes clearer, your mind becomes sharper, your relationships become purer, and your progress becomes faster when fewer people have access to your world. Privacy is not a wall around your life. It is a door that only opens for those who deserve to enter. 5. Solitude shows you who you really are. Most people go through life without ever meeting their true self. They live as a reflection of the people around them, shaped by society's expectations, influenced by the opinions of friends, family, and strangers, and controlled by the noise of the world. They become who others want them to be, not who they were meant to become. This happens because they never spend enough time alone to hear their own voice. Solitude isn't loneliness. It is the space where your identity finally becomes clear. When you move alone, when you sit with yourself, when you stop running from silence, you begin a journey inward that most people avoid their entire lives. In solitude, there is no audience to impress, no competition to worry about, no judgment to fear, and no pressure to perform. Without those distractions, your mind finally begins to settle. The internal chaos slows down, the anxiety fades, the constant comparison with others disappears. Suddenly your thoughts become clearer than ever before. You begin to notice the patterns in your behavior, the truth behind your emotions, and the real reasons behind your struggles. You understand what drains your energy and what nourishes your spirit. You recognize the dreams that are truly yours, not the ones society taught you to desire. Solitude becomes the mirror that reveals everything you've been avoiding. Buddhist philosophy teaches that the mind is like water. When it is disturbed, you cannot see your reflection. But when it becomes still, everything becomes visible. Solitude is what calms this water. When you are alone, you have no distractions to hide behind. You are forced to confront yourself, the fear you've been escaping, the wounds you've been suppressing, the desires you've ignored, the strengths you never acknowledged. In this quiet space, your real identity comes forward. You stop living as a character in other people's stories and start becoming the author of your own. Solitude also reveals your deepest strengths. When you spend time alone, you learn how capable you truly are. You realize you can make decisions on your own, solve problems on your own, comfort yourself on your own, and push yourself forward without external motivation. You learn resilience because there is no one to carry you. You learn discipline because no one is watching you. You learn confidence because you start trusting your own judgment. These qualities don't develop in crowded rooms. They develop in quiet spaces where you confront life with only your mind and your courage. And there's something else. Solitude shows you what you genuinely want from life. When you are surrounded by people, your desires become mixed with theirs. You adopt their goals, their dreams, their lifestyles, their values, and sometimes even their fears. But when you are alone, all of that falls away. You begin to hear your inner voice clearly, a voice that whispers the life you truly want to live. You realize what kind of person you want to become, what path feels right, and what purpose aligns with your soul. This clarity is impossible to find in constant noise. It only comes when you step away from the world long enough to reconnect with yourself, Walking alone gives you a rare opportunity to rebuild your identity from the inside. Instead of trying to fit into environments that don't support your growth, you start creating a life that reflects your authentic self. Instead of becoming what others expect, you begin becoming what you were meant to be. This is why solitude is not a punishment, it is a gift. It removes the noise, removes the pressure, removes the masks, and removes the confusion. What remains is the real you, honest, strong, aware, and deeply connected to your purpose. The version of yourself that emerges from solitude is someone who no longer needs validation, applause, or permission to move forward. You become grounded, self-aware, calm, powerful, and guided by an inner wisdom that cannot be taken away from you. Once you meet this version of yourself, you never fear walking alone again, because you realize you are not truly alone. You are finally with the person you needed the most, your real self. 6. Moving alone builds momentum faster than anything else. One of the most surprising truths about life is that you grow faster the moment you stop telling people what you're doing, the moment you stop seeking approval, the moment you stop waiting for someone to support you, motivate you, validate you, or walk with you. When you move alone, something shifts inside you. Your speed increases, your clarity sharpens, and your path becomes less complicated. This isn't magic, it's psychology and energy. Most people don't realize how much time and momentum they lose because they are constantly surrounded by opinions, expectations, comparisons, and interruptions. The noise around them slows down their inner engine. But when you move alone, the noise disappears and you finally hear the rhythm of your own progress. Momentum is built through uninterrupted focus. When you don't have to explain yourself, you don't waste energy. When you don't have to update anyone, you don't break your flow. When you don't have to deal with doubts, jealousy, or questions, your mind stays clean and sharp. Moving alone removes the friction that usually slows people down. Instead of debating your plan, you execute it. Instead of doubting your decision, you commit to it. Instead of waiting for permission, you take action instantly, and every small action compounds. That is how momentum is born. Most people underestimate how dangerous distraction truly is. It doesn't destroy you instantly, it destroys you slowly. A message here, a call there, a comment that gets in your head, a person who questions your goals, a comparison that steals your confidence. Noise is the enemy of speed. But when you walk alone, your environment becomes controlled. You choose what you allow in your mind, your energy stays centered, and your actions become consistent. In this consistency, you start achieving things that once felt impossible. Not because you suddenly became more talented, but because you finally stopped being interrupted. Buddhist wisdom teaches that the mind grows sharp in stillness. Movement becomes efficient when it is free from attachment, and progress multiplies when it is free from ego. When you walk alone, you're not trying to impress anyone. You're not performing for validation. You're not showing off your progress. You are moving for you. This makes your actions pure. This makes your decisions clearer. This makes your growth honest. And honest growth is the fastest type of growth because it comes from inner intention, not external pressure. Walking alone also removes delays. You don't need to wait for someone to be ready. You don't need to coordinate schedules. You don't need to justify why you want to move faster. You don't need to slow down for people who are not serious about their own lives. You move at the speed your soul wants to move. You wake up when you want. You work when your energy is high. You rest when your body needs it. You follow your own rhythm instead of adjusting to the laziness, distractions, or lack of vision of other people. This independence becomes your accelerator. Another hidden benefit: when you move alone, you fail faster, and this is a good thing. Failure teaches you quickly and privately. When no one is watching, mistakes don't embarrass you, they sharpen you. You learn without pressure. You adjust without judgment. You improve without fear. And because of that, your learning curve becomes extremely steep. People who move with others often hide their failures, avoid risks, or slow down to maintain an image. But moving alone frees you from ego. You experiment more, you try more, you correct more, and the more you correct, the faster you grow. Momentum also builds emotionally. When you move alone, you develop a quiet sense of pride. You begin to trust yourself more because you see what you're capable of without any external push. You start believing in your ability to stay consistent. You build confidence by proving to yourself that you don't need anyone to carry you. This inner confidence becomes fuel. It makes you take bigger steps. It makes you face your fears. It makes you commit to goals that once felt out of reach. The more you rely on yourself, the more unstoppable you become. And the truth is, the world cannot access your momentum when you move alone. They don't know your plans, so they can't slow them down. They don't know your progress, so they can't judge it. They don't know your struggles, so they can't use them against you. They don't know your strategy, so they can't sabotage it. Everything becomes internal, clean, safe, and powerful. You become a silent force, a quiet storm, a private revolution building itself one disciplined action at a time. When people finally notice your transformation, it seems sudden to them, but you know it wasn't sudden at all. It was built in silence. It was built in solitude. It was built in moments of private discipline that no one saw, and because you didn't talk, you didn't lose energy. Because you didn't share, you didn't attract negativity. Because you didn't wait for anyone, you didn't slow down. Silence gave you speed. Solitude gave you direction. Privacy gave you strength. And moving alone gave you momentum that no one could take away. This is why people who learn to walk alone begin to rise faster than anyone expected. They understand something most people never learn. Your life accelerates the moment you stop explaining yourself and start building yourself. 7. Disappear. Now to reappear stronger. Later. There comes a stage in your life when disappearing is not an escape. It is a strategy. It is a conscious choice to pull yourself away from noise, drama, distractions, low-value environments, shallow friendships, and conversations that drain your spirit. Most people misunderstand this stage because they think disappearing means cutting people off or isolating yourself in sadness. But in reality, disappearing means stepping into a private season where growth becomes your only focus. It is the period where you turn inward, reclaim your energy, and rebuild yourself quietly without the pressure of being watched. When you choose to disappear, you give yourself something the world cannot give you, space to evolve without interference. Disappearing is powerful because it removes every unnecessary influence from your life. When you are constantly surrounded by people, their expectations, their opinions, and their energy mix with yours. You start living according to what they want, what they believe, and what they think is best for you. But when you disappear, you detach from all of that noise. You finally begin to hear your own thoughts again. You see what your heart is trying to tell you. You notice the dreams you ignored. You feel the calling you buried. This clarity only comes when the world becomes quiet enough for you to listen to your soul. The truth is, transformation rarely happens in public. No one becomes strong while being watched. No one heals deeply while being surrounded by noise. No one rewrites their life in the same environment that broke them. Real change happens in silence and solitude. This is why monks retreat into the mountains, why warriors train alone, why thinkers isolate themselves, why creators disappear for months or years to perfect their craft. The world only sees the final result, but the real work always happens behind closed doors. When you disappear for a while, you give yourself time to break old habits, confront old wounds, rebuild your mindset, and rediscover your purpose. During this period of disappearing, you will face yourself in ways you never have before. You will notice what is broken inside you, what needs healing, and what needs to be transformed. You will face your fears without being able to hide behind people. You will realize how much strength you truly have, because now you're relying on yourself instead of leaning on others. This process is not comfortable. It requires honesty, courage, discipline, and patience. But it is in this uncomfortable silence where the strongest version of you is forged. You learn resilience, you learn emotional control, you learn self-respect, you learn how to move without applause, and you learn how to trust yourself again. Disappearing also protects your growth. When you are in the middle of building a new version of yourself, you are vulnerable. You can easily be pulled back into old habits, old environments, and old relationships that no longer fit who you are becoming. But when you disappear, you cut off the energy that tries to pull you backward. You stop inviting opinions from people who don't understand you. You stop explaining your healing to people who benefit from your pain. You stop dancing with old patterns that kept you stuck. In your absence, everything that is not meant for you slowly fades away. What most people fail to realize is that disappearing doesn't mean you are doing nothing. It means you are doing the deepest work of your life. You are rebuilding your foundation. You are strengthening your character. You are redesigning your path. You are focusing on growth that cannot be seen from the outside. You are making silent decisions that will change your future. And this silent evolution is far more powerful than anything you could have done publicly. When you finally return, people will think you changed overnight. But you will know the truth. Your transformation was built in silence, one private breakthrough at a time. There is also a psychological shift that happens when you disappear. You stop living for people's reactions. You stop craving validation. You stop seeking approval. You stop explaining yourself. You stop feeling guilty for choosing yourself. You begin to value your time, your energy, your peace, and your mental space. You become selective about who gets access to you. You begin to treat your mind like a temple and your growth like a sacred process. This shift strengthens you in ways that cannot be undone. When you reappear after a season of disappearing, you come back with a different level of clarity. You speak less because your mind is calmer. You argue less because your ego is smaller. You worry less because your faith is stronger. You rush less because your purpose is clearer. You tolerate less because your standards are higher. You settle less because you finally understand your worth. And you glow differently, not because life became easier, but because you became wiser, stronger, and more aligned with your true self. This is why disappearing is one of the most important phases of personal transformation. It is the bridge between who you were and who you are becoming. It is the quiet season that prepares you for the loud victories. It is the hidden chapter that shapes the final story. So do not fear disappearing. Don't feel guilty for pulling away. Don't feel pressured to stay visible. Your evolution is not meant to be public. Move alone, heal alone, build alone, strengthen alone. And when the time is right, you will reappear. Not as the same person who left, but as someone completely transformed. And the people who once doubted you will not recognize you. The situations that once controlled you will no longer affect you. The environments that once drained you will no longer interest you, because disappearing didn't weaken you, it rebuilt you. You gave yourself the silence needed to become unshakable. And when you return with a strength that cannot be explained, only felt. Disappear now, reappear later, stronger, sharper, calmer, wiser, and ready for a life you couldn't have built in chaos. 8. Your silence becomes a magnet for power, respect, and transformation. There comes a point in your journey where you realize that silence is not just a shield, not just a strategy, and not just a private choice. It becomes a magnet that attracts the right energy and repels the wrong one. A magnet that draws opportunities, respect, clarity, and strength toward you in ways that loudness never will. Silence may seem empty from the outside, but inside it is full of intention, alignment, and discipline. It is the place where you grow the most without anyone watching. It is where you sharpen your mind, strengthen your spirit, and decide what kind of person you want to become. Most people never understand this because they spend their lives broadcasting every thought, every emotion, every plan, and every fear. They don't realize that the more you reveal, the more people feel entitled to shape your path. But the moment you enter silence, the kind of silence that is chosen consciously, not forced by loneliness, you begin to build a life that is powerful in ways the world cannot see yet. Silence becomes a magnet because it creates mystery. When people don't know what you're doing, they cannot predict you, compare you, or measure you. This mystery protects you from the expectations that often trap people into living lives they never wanted. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop giving others the power to define you. When you stop announcing your moves, you stop giving people the chance to sabotage them. And when you stop sharing your emotional world with everyone, you stop allowing people to access your vulnerabilities. This is where your silent power begins. Everyone notices change when it happens loudly. Only the wise can feel it when it happens quietly. Silence is the language of the wise, the patient, and the truly focused. In Buddhism, silence is seen as the doorway to inner mastery. The loud mind is restless, scattered, confused, and easily influenced. The silent mind is centered, clear, and deeply connected to truth. When you choose to move in silence, you're not just shutting out noise, you're tuning into wisdom. You're hearing your inner voice again. You're noticing the desires you had buried beneath pressure, the dreams you postponed out of fear, and the patterns that have been holding you back. Silence doesn't just protect you from the world, it reveals you to yourself. It strips away the layers of identity you built for survival and uncovers the person you were always meant to become. And then something unexpected begins to happen. The more silent you become, the more you grow. And the more you grow, the more people feel your presence without needing to hear your words. Your silence begins to speak loudly, not in noise, but in impact. The way you carry yourself changes. The way you walk into a room changes. The way you make decisions changes. You develop a calmness that cannot be shaken, a clarity that cannot be manipulated, and a strength that cannot be questioned. People who once doubted you start paying attention. People who once underestimated you start respecting you. People who once ignored you start wondering how you changed so fast. This shift is not accidental. It is the result of choosing silence as your environment of transformation. Silence also gives you the gift of focus. When no one knows your goals, no one can distract you from them. When no one knows your struggles, no one can discourage you. When no one knows your plans, no one can interfere. Silence removes the emotional weight of being observed. It allows you to fail privately, learn privately, and succeed privately until you are ready to reveal a version of yourself drenched in experience, not opinions. Most people carry the burden of being watched. They work for validation rather than purpose. They move according to judgment rather than direction. They live loudly but grow slowly. But when you choose silence, you eliminate the unnecessary burden of performance. You work because you want to improve, not because you want applause. You take action because it aligns with your soul, not because it impresses others. This purity of intention accelerates your momentum. As your momentum grows, your energy changes. You begin to feel more grounded, more centered, more connected to yourself. You stop wasting energy on gossip, drama, or proving yourself. You realize how much of your past tiredness came not from the work you did, but from the noise you entertained. Silence becomes a detox. It cleans your emotional world, it purifies your intentions, it resets your mind, it renews your spirit. Your entire life becomes lighter because you stop carrying the weight of unnecessary interactions. You stop allowing people to pull you in directions that do not serve your growth. You stop living on the surface and begin living from your depth. The more silent you become, the more you rise. The more you rise, the more people talk. And here lies another hidden power of silence. It forces the world to reveal its true face. When you stop giving people access to your inner world, you quickly see who was with you out of loyalty and who was with you out of curiosity. Silence exposes relationships, not through conflict, but through absence. The right people remain connected even when you're quiet. The wrong people disappear the moment you stop feeding them information. Silence reveals who actually values you and who only valued your openness. It becomes a purification process, not of anger, but of clarity. As you continue walking silently, you begin to master timing. You no longer act impulsively. You no longer rush decisions. You no longer force outcomes. Silence teaches you patience. It teaches you that not every thought needs to be spoken, not every plan needs to be shown, not every emotion needs to be expressed, and not every opportunity needs to be taken immediately. You begin moving with precision, not desperation. You choose quality over speed, alignment over pressure, and purpose over popularity. This is when your life begins shifting at an extraordinary level. You stop being reactive and start being intentional. You stop being scattered and start being strategic. You stop being lost and start being aligned. Your silence becomes a magnet for respect because people begin to see that you do not need attention to feel valuable. You do not need noise to feel important. You do not need validation to move forward. This independence is rare, and anything rare earns admiration. People respect what they cannot easily predict. They respect what they cannot fully access. They respect what does not seek approval. Your silence becomes your identity. It becomes the signature of your growth. It becomes the armor around your peace. And eventually it becomes the force that guides you to a life that is controlled not by the world, but by your own inner clarity. Walking in silence does not mean walking without impact. In fact, it means walking with deeper impact than ever before. The world listens more closely to the person who speaks less. They pay attention to the one who works quietly and delivers loudly. They watch the one who vanishes with intention and returns transformed. And you, by choosing silence as your path, become that person. You become someone who grows in hidden spaces but shines everywhere. Someone who moves alone but advances quickly, someone who speaks rarely but with power, someone who lets actions carry the message that words could never deliver. Silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of mastery, and when you walk in silence long enough, the world eventually hears you without you saying a single word. 9. Your isolation becomes the training ground where the old you dies and the new you is born. There is a powerful truth that almost no one realizes until life forces them into silence. The version of you that will transform your destiny cannot be built in front of people. It cannot grow in crowded rooms, noisy environments, or social circles filled with comparison and judgment. The strongest, wisest, calmest, and most evolved version of you is forged in a place that feels uncomfortable at first, your own isolation. Not isolation driven by sadness or rejection, but isolation chosen with intention. The kind of isolation where you willingly step back from the world, not because you are running away, but because you are finally running toward the person you were meant to become. This isolation becomes your private battlefield, your secret classroom, your spiritual gym, and your transformation chamber. It is the space where the old you is forced to break and the new you begins to rise. Most people are terrified of being alone because being alone removes all distractions. You cannot hide behind friends, entertainment, noise, or routine. In isolation, your truth rises to the surface. all the emotions you never processed, all the fears you ignored, all the dreams you buried, all the strengths you never acknowledged. They begin to appear one by one. At first, this feels heavy because the old self resists death. The old self is made of habits that protected you in the past, identities that once made you feel safe, and beliefs that were formed by survival, not wisdom. This old self clings to you, whispering that change is too painful, transformation is too risky, and growth is too demanding. But isolation weakens this voice. Silence suffocates the old ego. Without the noise of others feeding it, your old self has nowhere left to hide. Slowly it begins to crumble. This is why isolation is not punishment. It is purification. When you step back from the world, you step away from the identities that were forced on you. You step away from the expectations that shaped you. You step away from the roles you were playing for acceptance. And in that sacred space of solitude, you finally meet the version of you that was buried beneath all the noise, the real you. The you that is not shaped by insecurity, comparison, fear, or validation. The you that is strong enough to stand alone, wise enough to choose silence, and powerful enough to rebuild life from the inside out. Buddhism teaches that transformation requires three things: stillness, reflection, and conscious detachment. Isolation gives you all three. Stillness allows your nervous system to reset. Reflection helps you see your life clearly, your patterns, your relationships, your wounds, your mistakes, your strengths, your desires, and detachment helps you let go of the people, environments, habits, and mindsets that no longer align with the person you are becoming. This process does not happen in a week or a month. It is a slow dissolving of the old identity and a gradual emergence of a new one. And isolation becomes the cocoon where this evolution unfolds naturally, without force, without pressure, and without external influence shaping your journey. In isolation, you also learn your true emotional and mental capacity. You begin to see how strong you really are. You start facing the storms within you without distraction. You confront your sadness instead of hiding it. You process your anger instead of projecting it. You sit with your fears instead of running from them, and slowly these emotions lose their control over you. You begin to develop emotional intelligence, resilience, self-awareness, and inner stability. These are traits that cannot be taught in books or classrooms. They are learned in the silence of isolation, where you face your own mind without filters. Isolation also forces you to become self-reliant. You learn to motivate yourself because no one else is clapping for you. You learn discipline because no one is watching you. You learn to set boundaries because you finally understand what drains your energy. You learn to take responsibility for your choices because there is no one left to blame. And as you build this independence, your confidence skyrockets. Not the fragile confidence that depends on praise, but a deep internal confidence that cannot be taken away. You start trusting your judgment. You start believing in your potential. You start understanding your worth. You realize that you can survive without certain people, without certain environments, and without external validation. This realization is life-changing because it frees you from emotional dependence and gives you control over your direction. As isolation continues, you notice another shift. Your vision becomes sharper. When you remove distractions, your mind begins to see the path ahead more clearly. You understand what you truly want from life, not what others expect from you. You begin to set goals that align with your soul, not your insecurity. You begin to identify which people deserve access to you and which do not. You begin to recognize the habits that are destroying your potential and the new habits you need to build. This clarity is impossible to reach in a noisy environment. It emerges only when silence becomes your companion. But perhaps the most powerful part of isolation is this: the world forgets you, and that is exactly what you need. When you step back, people stop expecting things from you. They stop influencing your decisions. They stop defining your identity. You are finally free to rebuild yourself without an audience. This freedom gives you space to change without explanation, to heal without judgment, and to grow without pressure. You begin to shape a new identity that reflects wisdom, not wounds, strength, not fear, purpose, not confusion. You begin to transform into someone who doesn't need attention to feel valuable and doesn't need noise to feel alive. Then, eventually, something beautiful happens. After weeks, months, or even years of silent transformation, you begin to emerge again. But this time, you are not the person who disappeared. You are calmer, stronger, wiser, more disciplined, more certain, more grounded, more aligned with your purpose. People who once knew you will not recognize this version of you. They will sense a new power in your presence. They will feel a new depth in your energy. They will see a new confidence in your eyes. And they will wonder how you changed so much without them seeing the process. That is the magic of isolation. Growth becomes invisible until it becomes undeniable. When you reappear with boundaries. You no longer tolerate disrespect. You no longer chase people who walk away. You no longer settle for environments that drain you. You no longer explain your worth. You no longer shrink yourself to make others comfortable. Isolation teaches you that your life does not need to be shared loudly to be meaningful. It teaches you that you do not need approval to grow. It teaches you that the world cannot stop a transformation that is happening internally. This is why isolation is not a phase you fear. It is a season you embrace. It is the place where your old self dissolves and your new self is born. It is the training ground where your character, discipline, purpose, and identity are rebuilt from nothing. It is where your spirit is sharpened and your mind is reborn. When you move alone long enough, the person you become is someone the old you could never compete with. Someone who walks with quiet confidence. Someone who no longer seeks validation. Someone who no longer breaks under pressure. Someone who no longer needs noise to feel important. Someone who rises from silence with a strength that is impossible to fake. Your isolation is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of the chapter where everything changes. 10. The more you walk alone, the more life aligns with who you truly are. There comes a moment in your journey when you realize that walking alone isn't just a temporary phase. It becomes a path that leads you closer to your real destiny. At first, moving alone feels uncomfortable because you are stepping away from familiar noise, familiar people, familiar habits, and familiar environments. But slowly, something begins to shift inside you. You begin to understand that the more you walk alone, the more life starts aligning itself with the person you were always meant to become. This alignment does not happen when you are surrounded by everyone's expectations, judgments, or energies. It happens when silence becomes your space, solitude becomes your companion, and intention becomes your guide. Walking alone opens a doorway to a version of life that you could never access in the middle of noise. Most people live out of alignment. They wake up each day doing things they don't love, staying around people they don't respect, fulfilling expectations they never agreed to, and carrying emotional weight they never needed to carry. They move so fast that they never stop to question whether the path they're on even belongs to them. Being surrounded by too many people makes you lose connection with your inner compass. You start following the crowd. You try to fit in. You absorb other people's desires, fears, and insecurities until you can no longer distinguish your own voice from the noise around you. But when you walk alone, that noise finally quiets down. And in the absence of noise, your inner compass becomes visible again. Walking alone gives you the space to ask deep questions, questions that most people never ask because they are always distracted. Questions like, who am I when no one is around? What do I genuinely want from this life? What makes me feel alive? What makes me feel drained? What path am I being pulled toward? What version of me am I trying to become? These questions cannot be answered in crowds. They can only be answered in silence, where the mind stops performing and starts observing. And when you begin answering these questions honestly, something extraordinary starts happening. Your outer life slowly begins to match your inner truth. Life aligns with you when you stop pretending, when you stop forcing things, when you stop pleasing people, when you stop chasing validation, when you stop following paths that do not belong to you. This alignment happens naturally, not through pressure, but through clarity. The more alone you walk, the more clarity you gain. And this clarity guides your steps in ways you never imagined. You start moving toward environments that support your growth. You start attracting people who resonate with your values. You start building habits that strengthen your spirit. You start making decisions that honor your peace. Slowly, your life begins to reshape itself around your true identity instead of your old one. Walking alone also strengthens your intuition in a way that crowded life never will. Intuition is the most powerful tool you have, yet most people ignore it because they are too influenced by external voices. But when you spend time alone, your intuition becomes louder, sharper, and more trustworthy. You learn to feel when something is wrong without needing evidence. You learn to sense when something is right without needing approval. You become guided not by fear, but by a deeper inner intelligence that is always speaking. You just couldn't hear it before. Walking alone reconnects you with this quiet wisdom. And once you begin relying on intuition, your life becomes smoother. You stop forcing connections that drain you. You stop staying in places that suffocate you. You stop chasing things that numb your spirit. You stop ignoring red flags. You stop betraying yourself for acceptance. Intuition becomes the compass that directs your path, and your path becomes something far more meaningful than anything you could have created while living according to the noise of others. Another powerful shift begins to happen when you walk alone. You start recognizing which parts of your life were built from fear instead of truth. You begin to see the friendships that existed only because you were afraid of being alone. You recognize the habits you developed because you feared change. You understand the goals you chased because you feared disappointing people. You see the relationships you stayed in because you feared starting over. Walking alone dissolves these illusions. It reveals the fears that shaped your past and replaces them with courage to shape your future. You begin to rebuild your life from authenticity, not fear. As this inner transformation deepens, your standards rise naturally. You no longer tolerate the disrespect, chaos, or low-effort behavior that you once accepted because you feared losing people. You no longer settle for relationships that drain you because you now understand your worth. You no longer allow distractions because you know the cost of losing focus. You no longer stay in comfort zones because you've tasted the freedom of alignment. This is one of the greatest gifts of walking alone. It raises your standards without bitterness. You don't become harsh, you become clear. You don't become cold, you become selective. You don't become arrogant, you become aligned. Walking alone also turns you into someone who is deeply self-aware. You start understanding your emotions instead of reacting to them. You recognize your triggers instead of letting them control you. You learn how to calm yourself instead of seeking comfort from others. You develop emotional maturity that most people never achieve because they never take time to sit with their feelings long enough to understand them. Self-awareness becomes your strength, and emotional control becomes your peace. You no longer get thrown off balance easily because you have learned how to navigate your inner world without depending on anyone else. But perhaps the most transformative part of walking alone is this. It teaches you the difference between being alone and being lonely. Loneliness comes from needing others to feel whole. Solitude comes from realizing you are already whole. Loneliness feels like emptiness. Solitude feels like expansion. Loneliness is fear. Solitude is freedom. When you walk alone long enough, you develop a relationship with yourself so strong that you no longer rely on the presence of others for happiness. You enjoy company, but you do not depend on it. You appreciate people, but you are not afraid of losing them. You love deeply, but you do not cling. This emotional independence makes you calm, stable, and fearless. And then something miraculous begins to happen. Life starts sending you people and opportunities that match your aligned state. You start meeting people who resonate with your mindset. You attract relationships that feel safe and genuine. You open doors to opportunities that reflect your true purpose. You begin experiencing success that feels meaningful instead of empty. You begin creating a life that feels like it belongs to you, not a life built from pressure, fear, or societal expectations. The alignment becomes so strong that even challenges start working in your favor because you no longer approach them with confusion. You approach them with clarity. Walking alone does not push you away from life. It pushes you toward the right life. It is the purification stage before the elevation stage. It is the quiet before the breakthrough. It is the solitude that prepares you for strength. When you walk alone consistently, you begin rising in ways that others cannot understand because they never saw the silent battles you fought, the discipline you built, the clarity you gained, and the transformation you underwent in private. Life aligns not with who you pretend to be, but with who you truly are, and walking alone strips away everything that is not you until the only thing left is authenticity. This is why walking alone becomes the greatest blessing of your journey. It aligns you with your purpose. It reconnects you with your soul. It sharpens your intuition. It strengthens your identity. It raises your standards. It transforms your inner world. It prepares your outer world, and it shapes a version of you that is unstoppable, unshakable, and unbreakable. When you walk alone long enough, life stops resisting you and starts aligning with you. 11. When you walk alone, you finally break free from the illusions that controlled your life. There comes a stage in your transformation where you begin to see something most people spend their entire lives blind to. Your suffering, your confusion, your anxiety, and your emotional heaviness were never the result of who you truly are. They were the result of the illusions you were attached to, illusions created by society, by your family, by your culture, by fear, by comparison, by insecurity, and by every expectation placed on you since the day you were born. These illusions shaped the old self you've been trying so hard to carry. But when you start walking alone, when the noise dies down, when no one is influencing your perception, when you finally step away from the world's opinions, you begin to see these illusions for what they really are, false identities that never belonged to you in the first place. Walking alone becomes the moment your soul removes its mask. Most people are living lives that aren't even theirs. They are following goals they didn't choose, chasing dreams they don't really want, staying in relationships that don't grow them, and trying to meet expectations they never agreed to. They don't question it because the noise around them is too loud. Their mind is always reacting, always performing, always comparing, always trying to keep up. But when you walk alone, the noise stops. And when the noise stops, the illusions begin to break. You finally begin to see how much of your life was shaped not by truth, but by pressure. Isolation becomes the stage where your real identity emerges, not because solitude gives you answers, but because solitude removes everything that prevented you from hearing the answers that were already inside you. In Buddhism, illusions are called Maya, the false stories we believe about ourselves and the world. These illusions create attachment, and attachment creates suffering. When you walk alone, you detach from these illusions because you no longer have people reinforcing them. For the first time in your life, you can observe your thoughts without absorbing them. You can question beliefs that once felt permanent. You can see your fears clearly instead of hiding behind distractions. You can feel your wounds instead of running from them, and through this deep self-observation, the illusions that once shaped your reality begin to collapse. One of the first illusions that breaks is the illusion of needing approval. Most people don't even realize how much their decisions are influenced by the fear of judgment. They dress to please others, speak to please others, choose careers based on what others think, and hide their true selves in order to maintain acceptance. But when you walk alone long enough, you stop craving approval. You realize that the people who judged you never defined you. Their opinions were never a reflection of your worth. The more you walk alone, the more your identity becomes rooted inside you, instead of in the opinions of others. This shift is powerful because when you no longer seek approval, you act from authenticity, not fear. Another illusion that breaks is the illusion of permanence. People cling to situations, relationships, and identities because they believe losing them means losing themselves. But solitude teaches you impermanence in the most honest way. You see how people leave, how circumstances change, how emotions shift, how life moves forward regardless of your resistance. Instead of fearing change, you begin to embrace it. You stop holding on to things that are meant to pass. You stop begging people to stay. You stop forcing relationships, opportunities, and outcomes. You begin to trust the natural flow of life. This trust frees you from emotional suffering because you finally understand that endings are not failures. They are transitions into the next chapter of your evolution. Walking alone also shatters the illusion of comparison. When you are surrounded by people, comparison becomes automatic. You compare your success, your appearance, your timeline, your progress, your relationships, your achievements, everything. But solitude breaks this cycle because there is no one to compare yourself to. Your focus shifts from "what are they doing" to "what am I becoming?" This internal shift liberates you from the invisible prison of competition. You no longer measure your worth through other people's success. You become aligned with your own journey, your own pace, your own growth. You begin to understand that the only person you need to surpass is the person you were yesterday. One of the deepest illusions that breaks in solitude is the illusion of weakness. Many people stay in groups, friendships, or relationships because they believe they are too weak to stand alone. But solitude proves the opposite. When you walk alone, you discover strengths you never knew you had. You learn independence, emotional control, self-discipline, clarity, intuition, resilience, and inner peace. You begin to see that you were never weak. You were simply surrounded by people who made you doubt your own power. Walking alone becomes the evidence that you can survive, rebuild, and thrive without depending on anyone else to carry you. The moment you see your own strength clearly, the illusion of weakness dissolves permanently. You also begin to break the illusion of ego. Ego is not confidence. It is the false identity you cling to when you are disconnected from your true self. Ego needs attention, validation, status, recognition, and superiority. But solitude dissolves ego because silence forces you to confront your real emotions. In the quiet, ego has nothing to hide behind. You begin to separate your true self from the image you created to impress others. You learn humility, gratitude, and acceptance. You learn that you do not need to prove anything to anyone. This humility gives you mental peace that ego could never provide. It makes you walk through life with calmness instead of competition, wisdom instead of pride, and clarity instead of confusion. Another powerful illusion that breaks is the illusion of time. Most people rush through life because they believe they are behind. They constantly feel pressured to achieve quickly, succeed early, and reach milestones according to society's timeline, but walking alone slows everything down. You begin to realize that you are not behind. You are exactly where you need to be for your evolution. Solitude reveals that growth is not measured by speed, but by depth. It teaches you that your life doesn't need to match anyone else's timeline. You finally understand that moving slowly in the right direction is infinitely better than moving quickly in the wrong one. The biggest illusion that breaks, however, is the illusion of identity. Your old identity was shaped by the world, by trauma, by expectations, by environment, by survival. But when you walk alone, you begin to shed that identity layer by layer. You stop seeing yourself through the eyes of others. You stop believing old stories about who you are. You stop carrying labels that limit your potential. In the silence of isolation, your true identity begins to emerge. Not the identity based on fear or pressure, but the identity rooted in truth. You start understanding your values, your purpose, your strengths, your wounds, your gifts, and your direction. This new identity is not forced. It unfolds naturally through quiet reflection, deep awareness, and honest self-observation. Walking alone becomes the process where the illusions die and the truth is born. You begin to live from authenticity instead of conditioning. You begin to choose from clarity instead of confusion. You begin to walk with intention instead of fear. You begin to speak with wisdom instead of reaction. You begin to act with purpose instead of impulse. You begin to exist with peace instead of pressure. And this transformation does not happen loudly. It happens quietly within your spirit, one breakthrough at a time. When illusions break, your life becomes lighter. You no longer carry the weight of what does not belong to you. You no longer play roles that exhaust you. You no longer chase dreams that aren't yours. You no longer attach yourself to relationships that don't align with your growth. You begin to remove everything that keeps you from becoming your highest self. And as you remove these illusions, you begin to rise. Not with ego, but with clarity. Not with noise, but with presence. Not with force, but with alignment. By the time you emerge from walking alone, you are no longer controlled by the illusions that once shaped your reality. You walk differently, you speak differently, you think differently, you choose differently, you live differently, because now you are guided by truth, not by the illusions that once blinded you. Walking alone is not isolation. It is illumination. It is the journey where the illusions die and the real you finally comes alive. 12. Walking alone teaches you the one master skill that changes everything, mastering your inner world. There is a point on the journey of moving alone where you begin to realize that the external world, its judgments, its expectations, its distractions, its noise, was never your real enemy. The true battlefield has always been inside you. The mind, the emotions, the fears, the old wounds, the inner dialogue that never stops, the beliefs that shape your decisions, the insecurities that limit you, the stories that repeat in your head. This is where the real war has always been. But as long as you were busy, surrounded, distracted, or influenced by others, you never had the time or space to face this inner battlefield with honesty. Walking alone changes that. It strips away the outer layers of life until you are left face to face with the one thing you have avoided your entire life: yourself. When you walk alone long enough, you begin to notice the patterns inside your mind. You start hearing the thoughts you used to ignore. You become aware of how quickly your emotions shift. You see how much of your suffering comes from your own interpretations, not the actual events. You notice how easily fear controls your choices. You recognize how often doubt paralyzes you. You begin to see how your old wounds still shape your reactions. This awareness can feel uncomfortable because you finally realize that the biggest obstacles were never outside. You were carrying them within you, and yet this discomfort is the beginning of true inner mastery. Buddhism teaches that freedom begins the moment you stop running from yourself, and walking alone forces you into that freedom because isolation removes every distraction that once helped you escape your inner world. At first, facing your inner world feels like entering a storm. You confront emotions you never processed, memories you never healed, and habits you never questioned. But slowly, as you stay with yourself without fear or avoidance, the storm begins to calm. You start recognizing which thoughts are real and which are illusions. You begin separating your true self from your emotional reactions. You start understanding the difference between your intuition and your anxiety. You learn to observe your thoughts without believing every one of them. You discover that many of your fears were nothing more than echoes of your past, not reflections of your future. This internal clarity is something you can never gain while surrounded by noise. It only emerges in solitude, where your mind can finally hear itself. Mastering your inner world means becoming the driver of your mental and emotional experience, instead of a passenger dragged around by circumstances. It means recognizing that the mind can be your greatest enemy or your greatest ally, depending on whether you control it or it controls you. When you walk alone, you develop this control naturally. You learn how to calm your mind without needing someone to reassure you. You learn how to regulate your emotions without needing someone to comfort you. You learn how to motivate yourself without needing applause. You learn how to create inner peace without needing perfect conditions. And this ability turns into a superpower because once you can control your inner world, the outer world can no longer shake you easily. Walking alone also teaches you how to detach from your thoughts. Most people live as slaves to their mind. A negative thought appears, and they collapse emotionally. A fear arises, and they stop moving forward. A doubt appears, and their confidence shatters. But solitude teaches you that thoughts are not commands. They are simply clouds passing through the sky of your mind. You learn to observe them without reacting immediately. This detachment creates emotional space. Instead of being controlled by fear, you learn to understand it. Instead of drowning in sadness, you learn to sit with it. Instead of running from insecurity, you learn to investigate it. Slowly, your emotions stop overpowering you because solitude has turned you into someone who can feel deeply without losing balance. As you develop mastery over your inner world, you also begin to release old emotional baggage. Memories that once triggered pain begin to lose their power. Wounds you never healed begin to soften. Patterns you repeated for years begin to dissolve. You start forgiving yourself for the mistakes you carried like chains. You start letting go of the resentment that was quietly consuming your energy. You begin to see your younger self with compassion instead of judgment. This healing does not happen in rushed conversations or crowded environments. It happens in silence, in the calm moments when you allow your heart to breathe. Walking alone gives you access to this healing because it brings you into direct contact with the parts of yourself you once neglected. As your inner world becomes cleaner and calmer, your outer world begins to reflect that transformation. You stop reacting emotionally in situations that once triggered you. You stop allowing people to manipulate your peace. You stop rushing decisions out of anxiety or desperation. You start communicating with clarity instead of anger. You begin to trust yourself instead of seeking permission. Your presence becomes stronger, your choices become wiser, and your energy becomes more grounded. People begin noticing your calmness without knowing the storms you had to face to achieve it. This calmness is the result of mastering your inner world, an achievement far more valuable than external success. Walking alone also teaches you how to create mental silence. The world is full of noise, notifications, conversations, opinions, distractions, but the mind needs silence to think clearly. When you embrace solitude, your mind finally has the space to rest and reset. Ideas become clearer, creativity becomes sharper, Vision becomes stronger. Solutions become easier to find. You stop overthinking because your thoughts are no longer tangled in external noise. This mental silence is where breakthroughs happen. It is where your purpose becomes visible. It is where your next chapter begins to write itself. And it only happens when you learn how to walk alone without fear. The more you master your inner world, the more powerful your outer world becomes. Because once you control your thoughts, emotions, reactions, and decisions, nothing outside you can shake your path. You become someone who is guided by intention, not impulse, by clarity, not confusion, by peace, not chaos. You become someone who moves with purpose instead of pressure. You become someone who lives calmly even when life becomes difficult. This is the true meaning of strength. Not the ability to fight the world, but the ability to rule your own inner universe. Walking alone teaches you that you do not need perfect circumstances to have a peaceful life. You need a peaceful mind. You do not need a loud environment to feel important. You need a strong identity. You do not need constant love to feel fulfilled. You need self-acceptance. You do not need control over everything. You need control over yourself. These are the realizations that change your destiny. They shift your entire life from the outside to the inside, from reaction to creation, from chaos to clarity, from fear to wisdom. By mastering your inner world, you become someone unshakable, someone who walks into life's storms without collapsing, someone who faces challenges with calm confidence, someone who navigates uncertainty with inner stability, someone who is no longer controlled by life, but actively shapes it. This is the transformation that walking alone gives you. It does not make you isolated. It makes you incredibly powerful. It does not make you cold. It makes you wise. It does not make you distant. It makes you centered. And once you master your inner world, the outer world becomes something you navigate with grace instead of fear. When you walk alone long enough, you realize that true freedom is not found in changing your surroundings. It is found in changing your mind. True strength is not found in defeating others. It is found in defeating your inner chaos. And true peace is not found in controlling life. It is found in controlling the only thing you ever truly could: yourself. Walking alone is the path that leads you to inner mastery, and inner mastery is the power that changes everything. At the end of this entire journey, after walking through silence, solitude, privacy, discipline, isolation, inner mastery, and the slow but certain evolution of your spirit, you come to understand something most people will never realize. Not because they are incapable, but because they are too afraid to walk the path you walked. You understand that walking alone was never about abandoning the world. It was about finally returning to yourself. It was about coming home to a version of you that had been buried under noise, expectations, pressure, illusions, and emotional clutter for years. It was about stripping away everything that was not you, so the truth inside you could finally breathe again. Walking alone was not a punishment. It was preparation. It was the universe clearing your path so you could grow without interference. It was life removing the wrong people so you could finally meet the right version of yourself. It was silence becoming a teacher, solitude becoming a mirror, isolation becoming a purifier, and your inner world becoming the place where your transformation truly took root. And now, standing here after 12 lessons, you can see with clarity that nothing in your life was random. Every moment of loneliness had a purpose. Every season of silence had a lesson. Every retreat from the world had meaning. You were not being rejected. You were being redirected. When you walk alone long enough, you begin to see life differently. You stop needing validation because you've created your own foundation. You stop fearing judgment because you understand that people can only judge what they can see, not the depth you built in private. You stop chasing acceptance because you realize that the only acceptance that ever mattered was your own. You stop forcing connections because you finally know how to connect with yourself. You stop looking for love outside because you discovered the love that grows when you take care of your inner world. This shift is rare. This shift is sacred. And this shift is the birth of your new identity. The person you are becoming is not the same person who began this journey. The old you needed noise. The new you thrives in silence. The old you needed company. The new you finds peace in solitude. The old you needed reassurance. The new you trusts your own intuition. The old you reacted to everything. The new you responds with wisdom. The old you was shaped by external forces. The new you is shaped by inner clarity. And the old you survived the world, but the new you is ready to shape it. This is the quiet beauty of transformation. No one sees the work you did. They only see the results. They don't see the nights you spent fighting your thoughts, the mornings you spent rebuilding your discipline, the moments you sat alone confronting your truth, or the hours you spent rearranging your inner world. They don't see the battles you fought inside, the illusions you broke, the fears you dissolved, or the identity you rebuilt piece by piece. But they will feel the change in your energy. They will feel the strength in your silence. They will feel the stability in your presence. And they will see a version of you that they never saw coming. Walking alone taught you something priceless, that your life does not improve when you change your surroundings. It improves when you change yourself. It taught you that peace is not found in what you gain, but in what you release. It taught you that you do not rise by being loud, you rise by being aligned. It taught you that disappearing was not losing, it was upgrading. And it taught you that the quietest seasons of your life often produce the loudest growth. So now you step forward with a different kind of strength, a strength that is calm, not chaotic, a strength that is internal, not displayed, a strength that is wise, not reactive. A strength that comes from knowing that no matter what happens in life, you are capable of standing, rebuilding, and rising again because you walked alone. You survived your silence. You mastered your inner world. And in doing so, you unlocked a version of yourself that was always destined to lead your next chapter. From this point forward, you walk differently. You walk with intention, not impulse, with clarity, not confusion, with boundaries, not fear, with peace, not pressure, with presence, not noise, and with an identity that is no longer borrowed from the world, but built from your own soul. This is your evolution, this is your awakening, this is your rebirth. You moved alone, and now your life will never move the same again.